I was I'm one of the Newtowners, should we say, which did make a difference in the early days of Dickinsons. When I say the early Newtown. I moved here just before I was 14, and I went to Dickinsons just after I'd done my national service. So I was about the age of 22 then. I was already married, and my wife was working at Dickinsons at the time. We didn't work in the same department at all. I was packing supplies I was in, which was quite nice, but there was a terrific animosity between the old Hemel and the new Hemel. If you was an old Hemel working there, you've got priority in repairs and maintenance, and you know, the setters and fitters coming up repairing your machine. If you wasn't one of them and you didn't play football or cricket for a local team, you was ostracised. You might just as well gone home, and that was it. So I stayed about 18 months and then I left and came back about 22 years later when Alfred Norders finished in the town, which was where my father used to work. He worked there most of his life, and I worked there for 22 years. Then it closed. I went back to John Dickinson's, where I stayed from there up till about 6 months before they finally closed. I went there as a driver, delivering their goods all over the south of England. I came to like it. It was very, very hard work, driving around London and places like that. But once you got on a regular round, you've got to know your customers. Certain customers were really, really nice. Others, you waited till they spoke first. Otherwise, you didn't know what mood they were in. And I was sorry to leave, really, but, you know, that Dickinson shut down. I didn't stay. Dickinson stopped, did our own deliveries and went to TNT, I think it was. So I then changed and went into the warehouse, that big automated monstrosity that was there. And again, I enjoyed that. That was something different again, and I really enjoyed myself there with the people from, well, they're all right with shift work. Driving was nights away. I spent at least two nights a week away from home when I was on driving. But nevertheless, it was a good job then. Completely different from the first time I was here. Going back to the Weiss family, she worked at Dickinson's on and off since just after she left school, right up until after the last child was born. She sort of, they say it was maternity leave nowadays, but it wasn't called that in them days. So we had three sons. As I say, she was a local girl, born at Shendish, like her mother, and her grandmother and grandfather lived up there. Virtually all her aunts and uncles at various times have worked at John Dickinson's, and I've heard some strange stories that went on. Even her aunts and uncles, you know, the married aunts and uncles, they worked here in John Dickinson's. To work from, I say the last 20, I think that was about 18 years, I think, all told, I was at John Dickinson's, and I enjoyed it. Complete opposite to the first time. You wouldn't have thought it was the same company, where, as I say, the Newtown really hated, well, they hated each other, the Newtown and the Old Town, but over the years, we all got together. I was lucky because I married a local girl, with all that animosity going around, but I got on great with her family. They couldn't do enough for me. I think it was a matter of being the young Cockney cheapy chappy, and I got on great. You know, I would do anything for them, and they would do anything for me. So it was really great. Other people weren't so fortunate marrying local girls, but I was. I'm glad to say.
So what was the appeal about John Dickinson's? Was it just the friendly atmosphere, or were there other things?
Um, there was a very good atmosphere amongst the people the people you worked alongside or with, amongst the drivers. There was it was great. You would help each other most of the time. There were one or two that, I mean, if you was doing somebody else's round while they was on holiday, they would lend you their maps. And you say, oh, can I borrow your maps? I'm doing your round. They say, yeah, all right. But there was always the exception to say, oh no, I've put them away, it's too late, you can't have them. So, yeah. But funnily enough, the worst person of that didn't live in Hemel, he lived at Berkhamsted or Tring or somewhere like that. And he had a horrible atmosphere. He just didn't like Londoners, full stop, I think. Yeah. But he was the exception rather than the rule. People that worked in the office, they were all local people, they'd been there years. And the foreman, if you like to call them that, the supervisors, a lot of them had moved down from Tottenham, so they were good people. Completely opposite to when I first came here, where it was almost the foreman walked around almost with a bowler hat, and his word was law. I mean, he didn't have a bowler hat, we just missed that bit, thankfully, but it was that sort of attitude. The foreman was God when I first came here. And I think the biggest, one of the biggest things was John Dickinsons wouldn't allow unions. They had the House of Dickinsons, which was like an in-house union. And years later, they were forced by government legislation that people were entitled to have a union, and that's when things really changed in Dickinsons. Really did change, remarkably so.
For the better or for the worse?
As far as the company was concerned, probably was, but as far as the workers was concerned, it was better. You had more rights to certain things to do, whereas Dickinson say, no, you're not having that. In theory, on paper, yes, it was a matter of you getting together and we're discussing it and we'll come to an agreement. But in fact, it was Dickinson says, no, we don't want it, and that was it. Whereas where a union came in, which Dickinson's fought against having it, but they was forced to have it once a certain percentage wanted it, they were obliged to have it by law. But up till then, no way would they have it. It was called the House of Dickinsons. But everything was in their favour. Did you know that Dickinsons was the first people to have their own swimming pool for their workers? There was a swimming pool up at Shendish at one time.
Didn't know that.
No idea.
They was the first company in Britain to have a swimming pool for their company, for their workers. It's all filled in now, it's tennis courts now, or it was before when it shut. Do you know there was a mulberry tree up there?
No, this is all new news.
In the grounds there's a big mulberry tree up there, or used to be. Yeah. Lovely place.
How has the look of Hemel Hempstead changed, like the scenery, the buildings, since you first came here? Is it very different?
As I used to say to the wife when I first met her, when we first got married, and to her family, we changed Hemel for the better for you. As I used to say to her, when I first came down here, you couldn't walk down the Marlows for all shit. That went down well, I can tell you, but for all the banter that went across between her and myself, we both had our favourite parts of Hemel. She learnt to admire all the new shops, whereas I used to have to go to Watford to do any shopping, which was a bit of a tradition that her family always went to Watford at Christmas to buy their pork. There's a big pork butcher's at Watford, and a lot of the local Londoners, a lot of the Londoners that moved down here, they went to. My own mum went to Watford to do a proper shop, because originally, actually she was my stepmother, she was a street trader. All her family were street traders at Brixton Market, So to come down here and see that market that used to be up in the market square in the high street, you know, 6 stalls and that was it. To compare with Brixton Market and all the rest of it was a real an eye-opener for her. You know, she would travel backwards and forwards for years after she moved down here to still go on her stall at Brixton Market. You know, I don't think she really liked it down there, my stepmother. A lot of people, when they first came into the new town, moved back to London. They couldn't take it because they built the houses and nothing else. Shops, churches, community centres, they come long after the houses were built. A lot longer. Because we moved into Bennett's End on the only flat bit of Barnacres Road. There's only one flat bit which is about 150 yards long, and we moved into that. End of February it was, and there was snow on the ground. We had no shops in Bennett's End, no shops at all. They converted one house into a shop, and that was all.
What did you do for fun? What was did you belong to any clubs, or do you play sports?
Well, when I first moved down here,
no,
there was nothing. Well, we used to have a community centre which was 2 ex-builders' huts that they'd use while they was building, and they'd finish when we moved in there. They used to. It was no wider than this. That was the church before the church was built. It was a dance hall for the youngsters because rock and roll was just coming out and all that sort of thing. It was really, it was a terrible place to live, Hemel. They got it all wrong. You know, there was to build an estate without a shop, where you was used to going to the end of the road and there would be a local grocer's or a dairy and something like that. And here there was absolutely nothing. To call it a market up the high street was an insult. It really was. It was an iron, and people just could not take it, and they moved back to London. I mean, when I lived in London, in Lambeth, we never had electricity. We only had gas on one tap for water. And to come down here, even 5 or 6 years after moving in, sometimes my father would come in from work and he'd get a box of matches out to light the lamp. You know, he'd just forget after 5 years, he'd still come in and go to light the gas lamp. You'd just forget for a minute that he had no radio, no television, nothing in London. But I still go back there now and again. For all that, I still got an affiliation for. I love Hemel, I really do, and I love the people here. But every now and again, I go back to my roots, shall we say. Despite what everybody says about London, because where I came from, it is absolutely chock-a-block with West Indians or their descendants. I can remember the first black people to come into Stockwell and Brixton. Lovely guy, and then they started bringing them over by the boatloads, and that's when things changed. But I can honestly say I went there 3 times last year, and I did not feel as though I was out of place or threatened by it in any way. I even went to my old Indian school, infant school. It's been rebuilt, but it's full of black children. Teachers, but every child is in uniform. Whereas we was running around there with our backsides hanging out of our trousers, you know, because it was just after the war, so we had nothing. These children are absolutely wonderful. You couldn't fault these kids or the teachers or their behaviour. They, you know, as they went by, if you were walking down, they would move to one side and let you through. You know, all this bit that you see with these gangs, yes, there is gangs there. There always will be. There's got gangs in Hemel, but it's no worse. I felt absolutely perfectly fit. The only difference is my road, the road I lived in, is not there anymore. It was a little private road, 22 houses, and there was building on it. First time I went back, about 3 years ago, the bloke standing at the end there, where there was a cul-de-sac, in as much that you could walk through, but you couldn't drive through. Where the end of the road was, they was using that as an entrance. And they had a JCB digging. I said to this bloke standing there, how far is he going to dig? How deep is he going to go? Said, I don't know, not very far. Why? I said, well, where he's digging is a plague of London burial pit, and nobody knew anything about it. They built a factory on it, and this was going to be like a turning circle for the vehicles. And it was actually a plague of London burial pit, and nobody remembered it.
Yeah, that's a crazy story.
That is just...
Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible.
That's like the parts of Bennett's End and Adeyfield are all mines underneath there.
I never knew that either.
I never knew that. I had no idea at all.
Wow.
That's why you get some in Bennett's End and some in Adeyfield. The houses have cracks, and because the mines are underneath. And you've got lime kiln walk, a lime kiln, they mine lime. And there's a mine just up Lays Road. There's actually a mine under that. There was a big crater with the entrance to the mine.
Wow.
Tile kiln lane, because they got the clay out to make the tiles.
Makes sense.
Up at Adeyfield, there's a block of flats. It was all cracking, and they couldn't find out why. And they had to, put all these glass plates on it to find out if it cracked anymore. They'd have to pull it down. They couldn't work out why. Well, there was 2 flint cottages next to them, and they was talking to some old people that lived there while he was cracking. And I said, well, of course they would crack. You built them over a mine. And the clay, we're getting the clay up for the bricks. But nobody kept any plans of where these mines were. They didn't have to in them days. So there's all these forgotten tunnels underneath it all. When it dries out and that sort of thing, that's when you start getting subsidence.
Did you think Hemel's getting better or worse, generally speaking?
I mean, it did get very good. I think now it's going down again, and as much as employment or the lack of employment. At one time you could come, well, which a lot of people did. They got employment so they could move down here. Then they would move to a better employer to get more money. They had to work for them for so long, then they'd go to somebody else. Well, all those factories now gone. There's nothing is manufactured in them or anywhere now. So Kodak, that's gone. Alfred Norders, that's gone. And all the other places have all gone. All you now is, if you can get employment, it's the services. There's nothing manufactured. That's why so many people don't work in Hemel now. They get out, or they're unemployed. I should hate to be a young person now and try to get employment in Hemel. Mm. It's not just Hemel. I mean, it's pretty wherever you go, but Hemel is especially bad. It's just servicing. I mean, I've got. I'm lucky that my grandchildren have both got jobs, or all of them. No, so like one hasn't got a job and he's never been employed yet. But, all the girls have got jobs, fortunately. But there are a lot of people that are unemployed, and it's going to get worse. I mean, Dickinsons is no longer here for a start. How many people, thousands of people that they employed, yourself included, where they gone? I mean, when I got made redundant here just before it closed down, I was lucky. I went on the agency, but I got an agency where, lucky enough, I was there for about 3 years in one job until the recession started again, and then I lost that. And for the last sort of 12 months of my employment, I went somewhere else, which I actually hated. I hated the place, but it was just a stopover until I retired. But I really hated the last job I ever had, which was a firm called Sunoco up in the industrial estate that done all Gillette packaging. But that's gone. That went to Poland, and I heard a fortnight ago. It's now in South America somewhere, again because it's cheaper than what they could do it at Poland.
What was bad about that job?
Absolutely boring. You sat at the end of a bench or alongside other people just picking up and putting like that all day long and packing. It was mind-boggling. You know, you're brain dead at the end of the day. You 12 hours there or 8 hours or whatever it was. It was just, and they set targets. The trouble is, once you met that target, they altered the goalposts. They wanted even more because you was doing X number of pallets per day, and you met that. They would either alter the target, so you had to do more, or take somebody off the line. So you all had to work harder to produce the same. It never stopped. Whatever target you met it, then they would alter the goalposts, and it was an absolutely horrendous place to work. I was really glad to get out of there. I couldn't wait for my 65th birthday and got out. Yeah. I think the only thing that kept me sane was my grandchildren. Because you know we're all a close family, all my children and grandchildren, and now we have a good time, very very close. But I can't say that my father's family were close, because they were all over various parts of London. We was the only part of the family that moved out here. All his family stayed in various parts of London, so we got lost touch with them, so, which is a shame really, because I must have lots of cousins. Well, I know I've got cousins out there if they're still alive, but lots of great cousins somewhere that I've never met, and I can't trace them because they lived so far apart. But other than that, but, yeah, I think the best thing my father ever done was move to Hemel. It may be the only good thing he ever done, but it was the best he ever done. He didn't want to. It was right till the last minute that he changed his mind and moved down here. It really was. You know, I'm born from a smog-ridden London out to the green fields of Hertfordshire, and a school that was virtually in a field, that Ailey Field. It was wonderful. It really was wonderful to come out here. As I say, it was the best thing he ever done. Because on my mother's side, they're all country people. Although my gran lived in London, in the same street as me, all her brothers and that were all ran farms for different people. So although I never went to the farm a few times, it was nice to get out in the country. It was nice when my stepmother, we used to go hop picking. And that was a holiday. That's the only holiday we ever had as London, as Cockneys. So that was an eye-opener and all. God. Everybody thinks, oh, it's hop picking, it's all out in the fields all day and running around, but it wasn't. You had to work. Where it was raining or thunder and lightning, you still had to pick them hops, because you had to earn money. In fact, a lot of people didn't make any money out of it, because each farm had its own shop, and you'd done it on tick. You didn't get paid till at the end of it. So if you run up a big bill for buying bread and milk and whatever, which was always dearer there than buying it, well, there was no shops around. So, but if you could go to a shop, it would be cheaper. But, it was to be brought up under that. It was. And then come out here into the glorious open fields and see cows and sheep and horses. It was wonderful, it really was. I mean, to come away from mucky old trams and open fires, you know, in the great coal fires and things like that. No electricity, no television, just a cinema if you could afford it. And to come out here, what a wonderful place, heaven in comparison with London. But you never lose the fact that you are a Londoner. I mean, I came out here and the Weiss family, they say, oh, I didn't Cockney like you, talking like quite. If I went back to London, they say, oh, no, you talk like a country bumpkin. How can you win? I loved it out here, I really did. I still do. I wouldn't want to go back to live in London. Although my youngest son, who was an apprentice at Dickinsons, he was one of the last apprentices they ever had, and then because they shut down, the machine he worked on here was bought by a company, and he went down there to run it, in South London. But then that company folded, and he went elsewhere. But he's still down there. He loves it there, and it's not far from where I was born. In fact, he has to go by a big, massive graveyard in London, where my mother is buried. He goes by it twice a day. Unfortunately, she died just day before my 7th birthday, unfortunately, and it took me 50 years to find out where she was buried. 50 years it took me to find it. But now I know how to do it. It's easy. But it took me 50 years to find her.
Why did it take so long? If you don't mind me
unfortunately, I
asking.
found out years afterwards it was actually a pauper's grave. But all graves or burials in London, public burials, are recorded, even in Hemel, and every grave has got a number. And I found out, I knew roughly what graveyard it was. It was a massive big one, but I knew it was near a railway. I could just remember as a kid, it's near a railway, single track railway line went by. So eventually, I went up there, and there's an office, and I told them, and I knew the date of death, and they got all these big ledgers. And you go through, so you start off with the date of death, and you go forward, till they find the name, and they tell you the number, the plot number, and then they say, oh, well, it's over there, like that. And it's not the only grave I've now found, the people that are buried there. So, yes, there's other people that I've known that are buried in the same graveyard. Massive big place. Yeah. But that's the sort of thing, it doesn't happen today. Well, there's not many people actually, to be honest, there's not many people buried today, they're all cremated. So they've got no official grave, really. I mean, their ashes are put around somewhere, usually at a place that they like, or like my wife's ashes are at Lee's Wood campsite, because we loved the place, we both were scouters. She died, and now they're up there in the chapel, just scattered in the chapel. And that's where mine will be one day.
That's nice, yeah, that's...
Because I still go up to the I was up there this morning, actually, working. I just pop in the chapel and see her, talk to her. But they're not the only person who's got ashes that are either buried there or scattered there. There's a whole plaque of people that have worked there, yeah, lovely.
Special place for lots
It
of
is a
people.
special place. Yeah. I've been doing, and she and the wife was doing scouting with me, not as long as I was. I've been doing it, must be 50 years now scouting. I'm still doing it. Love it. I mean, the wife was used to come away and help when I was a leader with me, or the club leader, doing things like that. And she said, "This is stupid. I might just as well go into uniform and do the job, as I might see more of you." So she went into uniform and she thoroughly enjoyed it. She loved it. I know we haven't spoken much about Dickinsons, but it's still part of Hemel and the people that work there.
It's actually the aspect that we, been kind of looking for a bit more today as well, because we haven't had too much of this side of the industry of Hemel and the kind of stories it makes and the families that form ties and bonds here. So
with my wife's family, they were really tied up, from working on the farm or in service, and their sons and daughters worked at Dickinsons, as my wife did. She left to have babies and then come back again. The only thing was, it didn't actually kill her, but it must have contributed to her, because she was on what they call sewing, and the the inserts of the books, the pages, you know, he got stitches through it and then it made so many together and make a book, it was bound. Well, every time she put one on, she had to dress a pedal, and you know, doing that thousands of times a year or a day even, while the knee and the hip out, so she had to have replacements, and I don't think that done a lot of good. But yeah, it's what they call it now, repetitive strain injury they call it today. But in them days, you just had to accept it. But, I mean, you see, there was a hell of a lot of people in Dickinsons walking around with bits of their fingers missing when they caught them machines in the rollers or in the guillotines. It was rampant in Dickinsons. I mean, in them days, I mean, there was no compensation or anything like that. You just got on with it, and thankfully you still got a job to go back to. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, thanks so much for that.
So you're welcome.
Really appreciate
I've
it.
been some of help.
That's fantastic.
That's
We've
excellent
got,
stuff. Yeah.
In fact, all these local memories outside of Dickinson's are really good, because it
all ties
it's
into
local, That's it. It's all just local memories, really.
Yeah.
And for people who come here, can get a feel of Hemel throughout the years.
Yeah.
So you've just done that quite
So
comprehensively.
for us, there's my son who was worked at Dickinson's as an apprentice.
Yeah,
Myself and the wife as another generation. Her mother worked here, and her mother and father were up at Chetnich working, all right, not directly for Dickinson's, but part of the Dickinson story.
Yeah,
so you've got 5 generations there.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, there's loads to go through in
Have
it.
you ever read the book The Endless Web?
Oh, we've got it in the shop. I've certainly read some
Yeah,
of it.
they used to give you that when I was an employee at one time.
Really?
Yeah, they used to give it to you. I mean, you look in there, the list of people that actually, the generations I still know people from that book that I still used to work at. The Puddyfoots were one of them. They worked, generations of them worked here.
Really?
Puddyfoots.
Puddyfoots.
They were still at Puddyfoots when I was working here. Yeah, they go back to the beginning.